Hello and welcome to the Connecting Material podcast number 13 for January 6th, 2021. And our subject is Epiphany. What's it all about? And those two gentlemen on the screen, they are going to be the subject tonight of this podcast as we are in the season of Epiphany. Let's see here. I need to adjust my camera. I am Pastor Kent from Whittier, pastor of Fairfax United Methodist Church and also of Our Savior Lutheran Church and Central Lutheran Church, all from the Fairfax and Franklin area of Minnesota. And I welcome you tonight. So the story of Epiphany is going to be covered here tonight. And it is covered by the gospel writer Matthew in chapter 3. The characters are the wise men, also known as the Magi. And I'll explain that a little more. And then also King Herod. We don't always talk about Herod, but Herod figures in this story, for better or for worse. So welcome as we begin this. Epiphany is described as a manifestation of a divine or supernatural being. It comes from the Greek word Epiphany, which means to reveal, to make known. And the festival Epiphany celebrates the theophany, that is the revelation of God incarnate in Jesus Christ. It is a church festival commemorating the Epiphany. Happens on January 6th, today. Is the first day after the last day of the 12 days of Christmas. And it was first celebrated as early as 354, the Christian era. The Epiphany is celebrated both in the Western and Eastern churches, but there are some major differences between them in precisely which events the feast commemorates. For Western Christians, the feast primarily commemorates the coming of the Magi, of these wise men. It's only a minor reference to the baptism of Jesus and the miracles of the wedding at Cana. So this whole season, which lasts quite a long time, up into Transfiguration Sunday and Ash Wednesday. So we will be hearing about Epiphany for quite a few weeks. In the Eastern churches, celebrate the baptism and the Jordan. And in both traditions, the essence of the feast is the same. It's a manifestation of Christ to the world, whether that is an infant or as an adult in the River Jordan, and the mystery of the incarnation. The miracle at the wedding in Cana is also celebrated during Epiphany as one of the first manifestations of Christ's public ministry. As many of the Western Christian churches, the eve of the feast celebrated on the 12th night of Christmas, Epiphany Eve. The Monday after Epiphany is known as Plough Monday, the traditional starting of the English agricultural season. And Plough Monday is generally the first Monday after the 12th day of Christmas. And there are references to the plough day dating back to the 15th century. And with the etymology and the history of this festival behind us, we want to move into the story itself. Matthew tells us that the wise men, also known as the Magi, members of a priestly caste of ancient Persia, from the east, as we have known, and they came in search of the newborn child. But we note that Matthew never talks about three wise men. That's how we always think of it, but there's never a number involved in talking about these wise men. So these wise men come to Herod supposing he would know about this event of this child being born. And they asked him, where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising, and we have come to pay him homage. And these wise men, though they are from Persia, are familiar with Hebrew scriptures, as many of the astronomers were, and the wise men and holy men. They were familiar with a lot of different religious writings. When Herod is asked where it's to happen, they just purely respond, in Bethlehem of Judea, for it has been written by the prophet, and you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel. Of course, we have Herod, the paranoid king. He had a history of killing any possible threat to his throne. Even his own family was not safe from his madness. He is concerned about the challenge to his throne and told the Magi, go and search for him diligently. And when you have found him, come back to me and tell me where you found him, and I will go and I will pay homage to him. Well, of course, there was an ulterior motive behind his sending them, as we will hear. So the Magi go and they find the child where the star stood. Never are they addressed by an angel. They have found this just by their astronomy and by following this star. And if you're aware, on the 21st of December, if you had the opportunity to see Jupiter and Saturn line up, you saw what they might have seen. So anyhow, they come and they find the child, they enter the home, and they pay reverence to Jesus, and they present the family with these well-known gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. But before they return home, they have a dream that warns them to go home by a different route, not to go back to Herod, which they heeded and left. What we need to be aware of is the message about God's plan for including all the world in this plan of salvation. The manifestation of Christ to the Magi is a representative of manifestation to us, represented by the Gentiles. We are there in person with the Magi when they found him. We are included in the form of the Magi, searching for God's King of creation, God's salvation. However, there is a negative note within this large story. Not so much celebrated as memorialized. It actually has a day dedicated to it on December 28th. It is called the Massacre of the Innocent, and it's found in Matthew 2, 16 through 18. Herod the king of Judea at the time of Jesus' birth, orders the execution of all the male children 2 years or under in the vicinity of Bethlehem. When the Magi have not come back to him, he realizes he's been tricked, and his anger flares. And he kills these 2-year-old children. I think I want to let you sit with that. Let me read the section. Let's first pause a moment to think about this image of the slaughter, the massacre of the innocent. The horridness of such an act, of such horrendous nature, of killing infants. Of course, Joseph's been warned to by an angel in a dream to take the child and his mother and go to Egypt and wait there until the angel tells him that it's safe after Herod has died. Now, this is followed by a reference to and a quotation from the book of Jeremiah by Matthew. Then what was said through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. A voice is heard in Ramah, weeping and great mourning. Rachel weeping for her children and refusing to be comforted because they are no more. Well, of course, Joseph, Mary, and Jesus leave town before this happens and head to Egypt. And later the angel tells them that they can go back and that Herod is gone. And so they go back and they go into the district of Galilee. And there they made a home in a town called Nazareth, again to fulfill the words of the prophet, this time Hosea, in chapter 11:1. Out of Egypt I have called my son. Now this ends that birth narrative. It leads us into Matthew chapter 3 and the story of John the Baptizer. For us this Sunday, that will be Luke chapter 3, verses 1 through 22, as we hear the story of John the Baptist and the baptism of Jesus. And that's our podcast right now. But join me next week as we explore Luke 4, verses 31 through 44, where Jesus cast out demons who knew him, who recognized him, and how he heals Peter's mother-in-law of her fever. I'd like to remind you that we have worship services are on Facebook Live, Saturdays at 5 o'clock from Fairfax United Methodist Church on their Facebook page, and then at 9 a.m. On Sunday morning from Central Lutheran Church, and then at 10:30 from Our Savior Lutheran Church, and those are both found at their times on Our Savior Central Lutheran Church's Facebook page. So join us for that also. Until then, this is Pastor Kent saying, God's bless us, everyone, no exception.